Hello friends, welcome to my channel Med Simply Learn. Today I am going to discuss classification of hormones based on their mechanism of action. So let's start the video. So first of all, let's understand what are hormones. These are the organic substances produced in small amounts by the endocrine glands and secreted into the bloodstream to control the metabolic and biological activities in the target cells. Let's try to understand this through this diagram. See, this is an endocrine cell, a cell of the endocrine gland. It secretes the hormones inside the secretory vesicles, and whenever there is a need for these hormones, through the exocytosis, these secretory vesicles release these hormones in the bloodstream directly, and through the blood, the hormones reach the target cells and exert their action. So, after the introduction, let's see the functions of hormones. Hormones are required for maintaining the various biological and the metabolic functions of the body, like development and growth of the body, metabolism, sexual function and reproductive growth, control of mood and cognitive function, and maintenance of body temperature and thirst. Now coming to the classification of hormones. Hormones can be classified in various ways, like on the basis of their chemical nature or structure, on the basis of mechanism of action, nature of action, stimulation of the endocrine glands, and effects of hormones. But in today's video, we will only see the classification based on the mechanism of action. Now coming to the classification of hormones based on the mechanism of action, they can be classified into group 1 hormones and group 2 hormones. Broadly, on the basis of mechanism of action, hormones can be classified into two groups, group 1 hormones and group 2 hormones. Group 1 hormones are lipophilic in nature, while group 2 hormones are hydrophilic in nature. Lipophilic means they are fat loving hormones, while hydrophilic are water loving hormones. What that signifies is, since these are group 1 hormones are lipophilic, they can diffuse across the plasma membrane of the target cells and exert their actions by entering inside the cell through their receptors. While group 2 hormones, being hydrophilic, cannot diffuse across the plasma membrane of their target cells. So these hormones, that is group 1 hormones, bind to the cytoplasmic or the nuclear receptors inside the cells, whereas group 2 hormones, they bind to the cell surface receptors as they do not enter the target cells. Group 1 hormones do not require any second messengers to exert their action, whereas group 2 hormones require second messengers like cyclic AMP, cyclic GMP, etc. to exert their action. Examples of group 1 hormones are basically all the steroidal hormones like sex hormones, testosterone, progesterone, and T3 and T4, thyroid hormones. Whereas examples for group 2 hormones are insulin, epinephrine, glucagon, FSH, LH, prolactin, etc. So continuing our discussion, let's try to understand the mechanism of action of group 1 hormones. As we can see in this diagram, group 1 hormones, which are lipophilic in nature, they require a transport protein to be carried in the bloodstream. When they reach their target cell, they separate from their transport protein and diffuse through the membrane inside the cell. Depending on whether they have a cytoplasmic receptor or a nuclear receptor, that hormone binds to its receptor. Here in this diagram we have the nuclear receptor, so this hormone goes inside the nucleus by diffusing through the nuclear membrane and binds to its receptor. When it binds to the receptor, it forms a receptor hormone complex which binds to the specific region on a DNA known as hormone response element. Binding of this hormone receptor complex to this hormone response element on the DNA initiates the transcription of mRNA, which ultimately leads to the synthesis of new protein, and this new protein is responsible for the action of that particular hormone. So this is how the whole mechanism is there for the group 1, that is the lipophilic hormones. Now let's discuss the mechanism of action of group 2 hormone. Group 2 hormones are hydrophilic in nature and they bind to the surface receptors of the cells since they cannot cross the lipid bilayer or the cell membrane. So they communicate through the intermediary molecules which are known as second messengers, which are generated as the consequence of the hormone action. See, in this diagram we can try to understand it more clearly. This is the cell surface receptor on which these group 2 hormones act. Hormone binds to this receptor which spans through the membrane and is coupled to a heterotrimeric protein known as the G protein. When this hormone binds to its receptor, one of the subunits of this G protein gets detached, that is the alpha subunit, and this alpha subunit then binds to the adenylate cyclase enzyme, leading to the conversion of ATP into cyclic AMP, and this is the second messenger in this case. So we have one of the second messengers as cyclic AMP. There are other second messengers as well, like cyclic GMP, calcium, IP3DAG molecule. We shall discuss in them later. So continuing on the mechanism of action of group 2 hormones, as I have discussed the generation of cyclic AMP, let's try to understand with the example of epinephrine, which is one of the group 2 hormones. So this hormone epinephrine binds to this receptor, which is a cell surface receptor. On binding the receptor, it activates the G protein, which leads to the activation of the enzyme adenylyl cyclase, and this enzyme is responsible for conversion of ATP into cyclic AMP, which is the second messenger in this case. This cyclic AMP then acts on the protein kinase enzyme and activates this enzyme. When this enzyme activates, it further activates another enzyme known as phosphorylase enzyme. This activated phosphorylase enzyme will lead to the conversion of glycogen to the glucose, which is released to the blood. So this is how the mechanism works for the group 2 hormones via the generation of these second messengers. In this case, the second messenger is cyclic AMP. There are other second messengers like cyclic GMP, calcium, IP3, DAG, etc., which are responsible for the action of these hormones. So after seeing the mechanism of action of group 2 hormones, now let's finally see the subclassification of these hormones based on their second messengers through which they act. So first subclass is the hormones which act through cyclic AMP as second messenger. Examples include ADH or the antidiuretic hormone, PTH or the parathyroid hormone, glucagon, and thyroid stimulating hormones. The second subcategory includes hormones which act through cyclic GMP, that is guanosine monophosphate. Examples include atrial natriuretic peptide and nitric oxide. Third subclass is hormones which act through calcium or phosphoinositide as second messengers. Examples here include angiotensin II, oxytocin, gastrin, and cholecystokinin. And the last subclass are the hormones which act through kinase phosphatase cascade, and examples of these hormones are insulin, prolactin, and growth hormone. So friends, this was about classification of hormones based on their mechanism of action. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching. Do like, share, and subscribe my channel, Mad Simply Learn. Thank you.